What's going on, guys? Coming to you from the world famous Stub Cycles in beautiful Houston, Texas. And look what I get to bring to you today. Guys, this is the Honda NC750. And for a lot of people's money, this is the best commuter motorcycle on the market today. This one's paired up with the DCT transmission. And a little bit of a confession for you guys. I have got a bit of a thing for these Honda DCT motorcycles. They're growing on me. And ever since the first time I got a chance to ride one of these things, yeah, I understand that originally there might have been some, growing pains, but I gotta say, every time I've ridden one, I've come away much impressed. So for this ride along, let's get her fired up. And all the way, I gotta say, this 749cc parallel twin, it sounds good. Okay, so for you guys that may not be familiar, the DCT is an automatic transmission. So right down here, we're gonna go ahead and put her in drive. You heard that click, so now you know you're in drive. You're gonna take your parking brake off. Yes, it does have a parking brake, no clutch lever, no gear selector. We're gonna put her in, let's put her in sport mode. Get this thing on the road and have a little bit of fun with it. And again, I gotta say, these DCT bikes, one of the reasons why they're growing on me so much is because of how intuitive they are. But we'll get to that here in just a second. Before I dive too deep into this ride, I've got to send a huge shout out to Hunter, Tommy, and the rest of the crew over at Stub Cycles for allowing me to bring this bike to you. Now, NC750, as a commuter, I don't know that you could spend your money any better. With the DCT transmission, it is exceptionally user-friendly and smooth as well. Let's get around this guy. Oh, there we go. Right away, a test of acceleration gets us around that slow poke back there, and she's got a little bit of pep in her step, boys. So let's talk about the power specifications since we're playing around with her already. This motorcycle, smaller displacement, 750 cc's, tuned more for economy and bottom end torque. So not a ton of horsepower. Most of the power on this motorcycle really does lie between, say, 2,500 RPM and 6,000 RPM. And because of that, I gotta say, it's suited perfectly for urban riding, for commuter style riding. But that's not to say that it doesn't have enough power on tap to overtake and get around, guys. That intuitive nature of the DCT transmission is just like driving a car with an automatic transmission. Rolling into the throttle just a little bit, you'll get a slight downshift. Roll into it all the way, you get a pretty serious downshift, and she will just motor on forward. So absolutely no issue running in traffic whatsoever. And again, with this engine being so torquey, it kind of feels like it's a bit peppier than what the specification sheet would allow you to believe. In terms of suspension, well, it's definitely compliant, as you would expect for a bike like this. Non-adjustable, but not necessarily needed when you're talking about a bike that's going to be primarily used for commuting and maybe some light day trip type of excursions. So any of these bumps, any of these changes of plane in the highway, this bike is soaking it up with no issues whatsoever. It's very stable going down the road, even though it does feel a lot lighter than its roughly 500 odd pounds would lead you to believe that it would feel. One of the key reasons for that is just how narrow it is through the waist. And the reason for that is that the 750 parallel twin is laid over and very low in the chassis. So all the area that would normally be taken up by gas tank, well, the gas tank's behind the seat, but you've got a storage area instead of a gas tank. And so it's very narrow and very small feeling. And you get the sense that this bike would work exceptionally well for somebody of a smaller stature. Coming up to this stoplight, you can feel that DCT downshifting as we come to a stop. The brakes have got a really good feel to them and good adjustability with that brake lever. I gotta admit though, it is still kind of weird not having a clutch lever and not having anything to do with my left foot. But you start to get used to it, and then once you do start to get used to it, you find that it is such an intuitive riding experience that you kind of don't miss having a clutch if you're used to that kind of thing. Now, with all that being said, other attributes of this bike, again, it feels small, it sits very low as well, just shy of 6 feet tall, 32-inch inseam, and I'm able to flat foot this bike, so very sure-footed for sure. Feels very small. Again, I just can't get over that. All right, let's go ahead and get her on the highway. It has got a very pronounced intake growl. It's a lot of fun. Something that I didn't quite expect out of this bike. So getting onto the highway with this machine is absolutely not going to be a problem. Plenty of power on demand, and power all the time. One of the key takeaways that I would say with this tuning of this engine is that no matter where you are on the tach, it seems like you've got all of the available torque. I want to say it's somewhere around 52, 55 pound-feet of torque, somewhere in that nature, but again, it's always accessible all the time. And since it is tuned for more economy and city riding, it's my understanding that this motorcycle will knock down MPG in the 50, 55 mile per gallon range if you're just cruising and taking it easy with it. Oh yeah, the suspension, I don't know if you guys noticed that back there. You got some pretty significant changes of plane where they're doing some work, and this bike just absolutely soaked it up. The windscreen on this motorcycle, not adjustable, but I have yet to experience any kind of buffeting. I think it's perfectly suited for this bike. But if you wanted, I believe you can option a different windscreen, and Honda's got a ton of different accessories to go along with this bike as well. But as it sits, God, what an amazing commuter bike this would make. It feels nice and light, very responsive. Again, easy to get around traffic. Power on reserve does not seem to be a problem. It's not going to freak you out in terms of how it lays down power. Obviously, it's not meant for that. But in terms of being adequate to task, it's pretty good and a little bit better than I expected, just because the power is seemingly always there. Tell you what, I'm having some fun with this thing. I think part of that is, again, because of that weird thing that I have for these Honda DCT transmissions. Yeah, there was a time where transmissions like this did have some teething problems, I guess is a very polite way to put it. They had a reputation of being a little bit jerky, and I think that's what turned a lot of folks off to motorcycles with this type of technology. But as this technology has evolved, progressed, I gotta say, this is every bit as intuitive as any automatic transmission that you would have ever experienced in a car. In fact, it might be a little bit better than that, because you get a bit more of a positive feel on shifts. And because of how good the downshift protocol is, you never get an immediate jolt of power. It's a progressive downshift as you are rolling into the throttle. Great job on Honda for the way that they have evolved this calibration programming into this transmission. So again, here we are at highway speeds. The bike's very comfortable. Again, it does feel small. I think if you were much taller than, I don't know, maybe 6'1", 6'3", probably would be the number, but depending on how you're put together, considerably taller than that, I think this bike might start to feel a little bit cramped. But for everybody else, which is pretty much everybody else, underneath that height, you're going to be comfortable. And I'll tell you something else too, and I think this may be a little bit more to the point. If you're of a smaller stature, you know, say you're a female, 5'1", 5'4", this bike would suit you very well because it is so narrow through the hips. It almost feels like my knees are, I mean, obviously it didn't feel like they're touching, but they're so close together that I could easily see somebody having no problem moving this motorcycle around, despite what the specification sheet would say. You know, just the other side of 500 pounds sounds like a lot, but it's all in the way that you carry it. And this bike carries it so well that I think folks that would be looking for a motorcycle like this, I think you wouldn't really want to look any further, mainly because of the performance envelope and how easy this machine is to maneuver. And I've got to say, you know, I'm not really wanting for much more out of this bike in terms of power. You know, we get wrapped up in specifications, and it's easy to do so. You look at it and you go, 55 horsepower and about the same in torque. You know, how could that be exciting? How could that be fun? And it's all in the way that the power is put to the ground, and it's all in the feel of the machine in general. And man, this DCT is really good at being so smooth. Let's get this thing back on the highway. Listening to that intake grunt. Oh, that is fun, guys. It's always fun when a commuter bike gives you a little bit of theater, and this one definitely does do that. But yeah, just rolling into the throttle here, and we are in sport mode, so we have a bit of a more aggressive throttle map, and she is going to hang on to the gears a little bit longer. But yeah, getting her over onto the side of the tire a little bit, she's plenty capable. And at highway speeds, absolutely no buffeting out of this windscreen. You feel a definite lack of any kind of turbulence right here in front of me. God, what a fun bike. And for folks that may be right into motorcycling, just getting into this whole motorcycling thing, and you are truly looking for an experience that has a ton of versatility and a lot of value, at $9,500, this motorcycle brings that to the party. And it does so in a way that I think is going to be very appealing to a lot of folks that may be value conscious. And it's not just what you get for your dollar, it's the baked in the cake reliability and durability that Honda is known for. And you got to keep in mind, this engine is so understressed. So keeping up with basic maintenance, I have a feeling you would have a heck of a neat commuter bike for a very, very long time. Good on gas. I can't imagine this thing would be expensive to insure. Easy on components in that it's not making a ton of power, so tire wear is not going to be at the top of your list of concerns. And in its element, it's really good. Brakes feel good on this bike too. So certainly a purpose-built commuter. Not a ton of power, but you don't really need a ton of power. And again, I don't really find myself wanting for more with this bike. You know, a lot of times you'll ride a machine and it's, you kind of go, well, I'd like to have a little bit more. It'd be nice to have maybe a bit more punch. I don't really feel that with this bike because, again, all the power is available like right now. The calibration on the DCT transmission is extremely intuitive. It always seems like it's in the right gear, no matter what you're doing. And speaking of that DCT, since we're sitting at this stoplight, I want to show you guys this. You just barely twist the throttle, and it just barely starts to roll up. It is so soft with its engagement. And I would even venture to say that you would be doing exceptionally well with a clutch to be able to do as well as the DCT does with that very low throttle input. And even in sport mode, it's still very smooth. One of the takeaways, again, while we were on the highway, is just how stable this bike feels too. What a fun bike to spend some time with. And again, as a commuter, this bike is absolutely purpose-built. I don't know that you could spend your money better on a commuter style bike. So let's get her back here on the MSF course, run her through some of these curves back here, show you just how flickable and lively this bike can be. Oh, let's do our S-turn. Coming into it hot, trail braking into our little S-turn. And guys, I'm not trailing any brake at all. This is all DCT working for us. Look at that, absolutely nothing to it. And check this out too, guys. Hold on, let me do this for you. Get her nice and slow. There you go. I mean, just absolutely silky in its engagement. Can you believe that? A far cry from where these motorcycles started out. This technology might have been jerky in the past, but it is no longer that at all. All right, let's get these brakes going. Get on it. Full on the brake, trail braking into a little right-hander. Oh yeah, she is so placeable. That is insane. Not trailing any brake. Oh, there we go. Full lock. Oh, that is so smooth in the engagement. So yeah, it's come a very long way, but I gotta say, she made it, and oh, what a fun machine to ride. Go ahead and set our parking brake. One thing I want to show you guys is this storage up front. Look at that. Almost big enough for a full face helmet. How cool is that? So guys, yeah, as a commuter, I really don't think you could possibly do better than this. What a fun machine. I'm glad I got a chance to spend some time with it. Here you can really see where that engine and transmission are completely out of the way, leaving you with all this extra area for storage. I've got a thing for these bikes, and every time I ride one, I'm reminded of that. But with that, guys, if you made it this far into the video, consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps out the channel more than you know, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Y'all take care.